Only dummies invest in bonds. How dare you even promote bonds, Josh? Don't you know stocks for the long term, bonds are going to get killed because of whatever? Only dummies, terrorists, inflationary thing. Oh my goodness, it's just government spending. All right, so we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back in time. What are you looking at there, guy? Okay. He just got out of his slumber. So we're going to go back to 1937, January 1st, 1937. And we're going to go look at my man Roger Babson right here. He's a legend in the Wall Street industry. And we're going to take a look at what old Roger has to say about investing, but we're going to look at bonds specifically. All right. What are you doing, puppy? All right. Bond prices are the most amazing factor in the securities markets. They're selling at the highest prices in histoire. Since June 1932, the yield of the average bond has dropped from 7.5% to 4.125%. Interesting. I feel the present high prices in bonds cannot continue. Those buying bonds during the coming 12 months must exercise extraordinary care and judgment to avoid getting burned. Interesting. With higher money rates, certainly sooner or later, I feel that the general bond market is stay where the stock market was in 1928. I hear to bash old Roger Dodger, but a lot of people don't understand. They say bonds, man, they're going to get killed. The higher inflation, higher interest rates, government spending. I don't know what else they say. Bonds don't even keep up with inflation and all that. So I just want to show you something. So he said right there that bonds are going to get crushed when interest rates go up, and it makes sense. So right here is a yield on the 10-year Treasury. All right, so we're going to go to the yield on 10-year Treasuries from Robert Shiller stuff. It's going to be hard to see, I grant you, but just hear me out, babies. Hear me out. And we're going to go to 1937. Is at 2.68. 2.56, then 1938, 39, 2.36, 2.21, 1.95, 2.46, 2.47, 2.48, all the way down to the end of the war at 2.25. All right, so the yields actually continue to drop, even though I want to show you something else here too, kind of interesting. We're going to go back. On inflation to continue. All right, I expect to see a big improvement in federal finances. An effort will be made to cut expenses. Relief aid will be continued, but not on the boondoggling scale of the past 3 years. The government's income should rise steadily, but despite Washington's forecast to the contrary, I doubt if the gain in revenue or the slash in expenditures will be enough to bring the budget in balance by June of 1938, which means that inflation will gain ground this year. And it did. In 1937, we did have CPI go up. It's already taken big strides in recent years, although the general public is entirely unaware of it. Public debt is now at $16 billion. Has grown. Public debt has grown $16 billion since July 1st of 1930. Public debt grew by $16 billion since July 1st of 1930. What have we already established? We already established that the yields went down. The yields went down, which meant what? Prices went up, even though the public debt was just growing and growing and growing. Still, the Treasury is forced, right here, tax receipts have doubled since 1933, but they didn't have a balanced budget. Public debt was rising. Still, the Treasury is forced to raise funds to pay the public bills by selling government bonds. Where have we heard this before? The cycle repeats itself over and over again, building up bank deposits and ballooning the public debt. This is camouflage inflation. It will continue in 1937, aided by another form of inflation, the check or credit card type, similar or credit type that we had in 1929. Interesting. And what did we see happen? I just told you when we looked at Robert Shiller, the yield on the 10-year Treasuries went down, even though they were already worried about public debt in the 1930s. Anyway, let's just, again, we're going to go to this guy's right here. This guy over at New York University. We're going to see what the actual real returns on bonds did. We're going to go back to so he had written at the beginning of 1937. In 1937, stocks got smoked. They're down 32%. Bonds were up 1.38. 1938, 4.2. 1939, 4.4. And 1945, 0.40. So you can see the only year that bonds were down, this is actually the rate of return of bonds. According to this professor at New York University. There's some issues here, but I'm going to show you another reason why I tend to think this is probably quote pretty doggone close to true. We had a negative year in 1941, but you can see up until 1951 we had positive return for bonds, positive return for stocks. You can see stocks right at 1937 got spanked 35%. 1938 we're up 29%, but then 1939, 1930, this includes dividends. 1941 we got spanked again. So bonds, and of course you say it was because war. Look, you say anything, it's fine. But the facts are bonds did very, very well, all right? Even while the debt was going crazy because of war, because of Great Depression, all that. And everyone's saying, well, bonds are at record highs. Okay. All right, so let's look to another chart here because everyone and their mom, it frustrates me no end. We're going to look at Japan. All right, Japan from 1980, 90, right there, had a debt to GDP ratio of only 67%. By 2012, the debt to GDP ratio tripled to 220%. No, it's more than triple, a quadruple essentially to 220%. Why is that important? Well, because we're going to go look at the markets for Japan, the Nikkei. See, negative 38, negative 3, negative 26, negative 2, negative 21, negative 9. So the debt to GDP was growing significantly in Japan, and yet the stock market was getting destroyed. You know what was not getting destroyed in Japan? You want to take a guess? Bond market. All right, bond market. Now, everyone said, well, Josh, tariffs are going to cause mass inflation. I've said a million times a Sunday, show me the evidence of that. I'll show you right now. There's just the evidence isn't there. It's just not. From my X page, and you can follow me at Scanlon Josh. Instead of Josh Scanlon, Scanlon Josh. You'll see the various tariffs that we have put into place. Tariff abominations. And this is pretty much kind of what the beginning of the Civil War here, right here. Massive tariffs on imports. And you can see we did not have, and look, the tariffs, we have the McKinley tariff. They don't even talk about the McKinley Tariff Act right there in 1890. But we got the Underwood Law. We got the Morrill Tariff. I'm not familiar with that, but it's right before the Civil War, obviously, which destroyed the South. Well, because the South had cheap labor, i.e. slaves. It's amazing how the Democrats love them some cheap labor. They love who's going to pick the cotton? How dare we free the slaves? Who's going to pick the cotton? That's what they said back then. Now they're saying, who's going to pick our apples? How dare we'd get rid of undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants? How dare we? Who's going to pick the apples? The Democrats love cheap labor. Anyway, so what we have here is you can see we have massive declining tariffs right here starting in 1934, 1947. We didn't have any inflation at all other than a couple years after war to speak of, from right here to right there. None at all, none. In fact, we didn't have any inflation at all except for this time frame right here. Huh, and weird, what was happening to tariffs? They were going down to the lowest they've ever been. Look at that. Huh, weird, but we didn't have any mass inflation at all other than a couple years after war and price controls. And the only time we had big inflation was after tariffs were low. Well, the correlation is not the causation. That's what I'm trying to argue. I'm trying to say. If you're going to argue tariffs are bad, you'd argue it that it's recessionary, if not deflationary, but certainly it's not inflationary. It's just not. There's just no proof of that. None whatsoever. And you can say, well, if you put a tariff on apples, apples would be more expensive. No one's talking about just putting a tariff on apples. We're talking about putting a tariff across the board. It's just not true. Anyway, so the point being is all these people, oh, tariff's going to huge inflation, which is going to raise interest rates, blah, blah, blah. It's going to cause this bonds get crunched, blah, 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 blah. Dude, I'm telling you, man, they're just wrong. They don't know the history. They just don't. I mean, it could happen. Look, I'll never sit there and say nothing could happen. I'm just saying, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong and things go south according to what happened in the previous time frames? What if you're wrong? I just want to show you something else here. Last thing that will get you out of here. We're going to go to my man Ed McQuarrie's, where did I got this? Hold on a second. I got to look him up. And I interviewed Ed about a year or so ago. He took a mass takedown of Jeremy Siegel on his stocks the long run. I'm just going to show you here, and I'll, if I can remember to link this. So here we see our stock bond performance, 1982. Stocks and bonds pretty much tracked pretty close. So stocks did better, but not a huge amount. Then we're going to see our stock to bond performance. So from 1942 stocks to 82. I think he did. I'm sorry, 1942 to 2014 or something like that. You see stocks just destroyed bonds. Right? But again, from 1982, stocks and bonds tracked. And then you're going to see right here, stocks and bonds, they tracked each other to about dead. So I'm hoping back here. Let's see. Looks like, all right. So stocks and bonds tracked perfectly, basically, right up until then, right about 1943 at the end of World War II. You can see right about there, about 1943, 44 or so. And then the bond market just took off like a bat out of hell, not from 1982 to 2014, but right there from 1943 to 1968, basically. And that's it. No matter the federal government spending like drunken sailors, were they not spending like drunken sailors from 1982 to 2014? Yeah. And yet the bond market tracked. Now, the last 10 years, the bond market hasn't tracked at all. Huh. Interesting. Don't you usually want to buy low? I don't know. I'm not saying get rid of stocks. I'm just saying the idea that only dummies invest in bonds is silly. All right. Love your thoughts. Don't forget to paw the like button. God bless. We'll see you.